Welcome to the Mrs. R Relevant Daily Draft Podcast, brought to you by the Draft Professor. The Draft Professor is a group of podcasters bringing you daily draft podcasts and is home to the only dynamic mock draft simulator which allows fans to mock draft against other fans. The Draft Professor Simulator features a first-round challenge, 5 unique one-round drafts. The Draft Professor Simulator features a second-round challenge, 10 unique 2-round drafts. All mock drafts are always picking against the fans and draft analysts which use the simulator. Every mock, every pick, every time. The Draft Professor also features ranked players functionality, where you can rank your favorite players at every position. Optionally, you can add tiers to your rankings to show what round you have the players graded in. The Draft Professor also features Draft a Team functionality, which allows users to snake draft a team of 22 players to demonstrate your my guys, compare player strengths, and discuss draft prospects in a way no other mock draft simulator can. Thank you for tuning in to the Mrs. R Relevant Daily Draft Podcast. This episode will begin shortly.
All right. Hello, everybody. Welcome to Senior Bowl week. Today was practice number 2. We are here today. It is Wednesday. We're at 7:30 Central, 8:30 Eastern. We're going to be talking about offensive linemen, some verified numbers that Senior Bowl graciously gave us. If you are watching right now, make sure you hit the like and subscribe button for us. Let's get rid of that. We are joined by Mr. Bill Sparks and Jacob Roach. How are we doing today, Bill?
We are doing fantastic. Like you said, Randall, we're in the midst of Senior Bowl week. There's a lot of practices going on, a lot of measurements coming out. And we're going to talk about this offensive line class tonight, which has been a little bit discussed in somewhat of a bad way. But I think tonight we're going to put a different spin on it. But like you said, Randall, for all the folks that are currently watching us on YouTube, make sure that you like the video. Make sure you share this video out. Make sure you subscribe to the NFL Draft Fanatic YouTube channel. Turn on that notification bell where you can see lovely faces like mine and Randall's and Jacob's, sometimes 1, sometimes 2 nights a week. And coming this Friday night, we have our 32 GM mock draft. Randall and I, along with Anthony Russo, another one of the NFL Draft Professors, we will be the Todd McShay and Mel Kipers of the world, talking about the picks as they come in hot and heavy. Speaking of hot and heavy, Mr. Mustache down there, Jacob Roach. Jake, how you doing, man?
I'm doing good, man. It's been a long week. It's Wednesday. But we're out here, we're grinding, we're doing what we got to do, and we're making our way through it.
Oh, yeah.
Right.
Well, how deep this defensive tackle class and edge class, watching the Senior Bowl these last 2 practices, this offensive line has been showing some stout moves and some stout recovery is what I've seen a lot, that I've been impressed with these tackles on their recoveries.
Absolutely. It's tough to watch one-on-ones and to take them with a grain of salt, right? You watch a guy like Josh Connerly, who's a round 1 pick, just get absolutely mauled to death by Mike Green. And then, how do you walk back on the field with a straight face after that? Listen, that rep was pure hatred in Mike Green's heart. He did not want any part of it. It was just rude. But this offensive line class, a lot of people have talked about it. It's a down year for the class, right? When you talk about past classes, there's always been that top left tackle, the Joe Alts of the world, right? That one premier guy you can use as a franchise protector. This class doesn't have that. This class is not going to have that premier blindside guy, but it's going to be deep. On my big board right now, I currently have 71 offensive linemen, and that's tackles, guards, and centers. That's all 3 with a draftable grade. 59 of those are tackles and guards. 12 of those are centers. In my top 100, as you see here on the screen, these are all the offensive line that I have in my top 100. 19 folks here, which will kind of highlight a few of them. When you look at my big board, prior to round 5, I have 41 tackles and guards, 5 centers. That puts it right about 46. Last year in the NFL draft in total, there were 54 offensive linemen taken. This class is probably going to shatter some records. And part of that is because of the demand for offensive line play. There's a need for it. Teams across the league are always looking for offensive linemen, either starters or rotational guys, just because players are aging out, just because, they need to develop guys. So there's always going to be a need for it. This year, it seems like there's much more of a need, and the supply at the top isn't there. But man, the moment you hit pick 33 in round 2, they are going to run off the board. And we may not even get there. Jacob, what are your thoughts on this offensive line class?
I think one of the things that kind of created a little bit of the misconception around it was the names that we went into this year thinking about, a lot of them disappointed. For one reason or another, the Will Campbell thing. And then, because obviously he came in kind of as the unanimous, like it was Will Campbell was that dude. And then we're like, well, maybe he's a guard. I'm not really sure, and the same with Emory Jones. And it was like, well, and then a little up and down for Kelvin Banks and some things like that. So the names changed, but I don't think the class is bad in any way, kind of in my opinion. I mean, Josh Connerly comes out of nowhere kind of for me. I really didn't have him on the radar. I think this interior offensive line group is phenomenal. And a lot of them are going to be guys that are moving inside, but it's like you're talking about your raw numbers. Like I told you guys pre-show, I'm in the process of going back through my positional rankings and my overall big board rankings, going to try to get some of that stuff done and up and ready for this week, coming over this weekend, and reevaluating some things. Like, I don't know where I'm going to put some of these guys. Like Donovan Jackson might be a tackle, man. Like he might be a tackle. And then I thought Savanaia was going to be a guard, but now I think he's a tackle. It's like, I think this class, you said it, Bill, the NFL has an offensive line problem. Well, I got to say, I think there's hope on the horizon for any team that needs offensive line help, both interior and exterior. And the center class is underrated because I just started going back through some of that stuff, and I'm like, there's actually some centers like that I might take in the 3rd round that are true centers, that aren't just guys that are getting kicked inside. But I do. I think this class is a lot better than I thought it was going to be.
Yeah. I mean, the pluck and pull into different positions is probably one of the kind of most random things to go in that class to kind of figure out and organize the way it's going to go. But correct me if I'm wrong, Bill, on this, but it's kind of like the depth and how the offensive line is forming to be almost kind of resembles the cornerback class as well. You have your top guys in round 1, and then then you go through round 2 through 7, and you could fill rosters with the cornerback depth in it. But it's not outstanding, but they're available at yours to pick.
Yeah, no, you're spot on, because when you look at the top of the cornerback class, every one of those guys that are at the top, they have questions. And this offensive tackle class is the same way. They have questions. Will Campbell, right? The conversation, is he going to be a guard? Is he going to be a tackle? Jonas Savanaia, same thing, guard or tackle. Josh Simmons, who's my offensive lineman number 3, how is he going to rebound from that patella knee injury, and what's he going to look like? Guys like Wyatt Milam, his size, is he a better guard? Is he a better tackle? Marcus M'Bow from Purdue, one of the guys that I love, that I'm going to stake my claim on it right now. I've said it several times, but I'm going to say it here. If he slid inside to center, he would be the unequivocal, hands down. They got a ray gun pointed at the earth, and they told me to pick a center 1. I want M'Bow.
Love that.
That's how I feel about him as the center position, just because of how athletic he is and how he can move in space. And he's got the length and the size to play tackle. So it's not like we're saying, hey, kid, you don't have it out here, go play inside. He can play outside at tackle. He's got the length. He's got the size. He's got the athleticism. I just think it's better used at center. And that's what we're also seeing at the Senior Bowl. There's a lot of guys that came in starting as a tackle, and they've taken snaps at guard, they've taken snaps at center, left tackle, right tackle. They're being very creative with how they're using these offensive line down in Mobile. And it's very surprising because normally when you do that, you think you'd experience some kind of a drop off somewhere, moving guys out of unnatural positions. But from what I've seen, and Jacob, you can chime in on this, there hasn't been much of a drop off when they move them around like that.
It's been such a crazy phenomena with the offense and defensive lines down in the Senior Bowl, because you're going to get you'll get a rep where it'd be like, man, the defensive line. But then that offensive lineman will come right back with a great rep. Like Shamar Stewart got that strip sack on Emory Jones. Next play, Emory Jones was phenomenal. Like it's been so crazy to watch. But yeah, like I was talking to somebody yesterday who thought that Josh Connerly, who had a good day on Monday, might have had some of his best reps at right tackle. Like he said, like, I think maybe the best reps he had today were at right tackle. Not that he didn't have good reps at left tackle, but just to what you were saying, go watch what Gray Zabel did, especially day one. They're like, hey, left guard, awesome. Right guard, awesome. Center, also awesome. And he was just moving around, and it was like it was somebody, Casey Kinnaman, my co-host on the Barking Browns, was talking about it. He was like, you could tell, like, and I think Todd McShay had said something about this too. It was like Gray Zabel was trying to find a way to get every single snap so that he could put like more tape in front of these 32 teams and moving them all around and doing all of this stuff. But it was like it was just crazy to see some of these guys, because Gray Zabel plays it left. Did they line him up at tackle today? He played some tackle today, didn't he?
He played some tackle today. I don't know if he played left. I saw him at a few snaps at right tackle, but I don't know if he had the blindside protection.
But he has played guard tackle in college. Probably might be best inside. The arm length kind of makes me think that he goes inside. But yeah, man, it's been crazy to watch these guys that have just done it all without hesitation at different spots. Like it just feels like feels like a unique year to me, man. Like I don't remember seeing stuff like it on to this level. It's been really cool to watch.
Let me ask you, since we're now since we're talking about size and going inside, and Ryan brought it up, so let's kind of almost congeal that together, and let's talk about Willie Lampkin. Willie Lampkin, 5'10", 270, 10-inch hands, 32-inch arms, 78 wingspan. Sitting at center, he anchored when he could anchor on that leverage, and it's surprising what he got done today. But let's have a small conversation about Willie Lampkin.
Yeah, so I watched his rep against Deone Walker, and you'd think obviously Deone Walker is a mountain of a man, 6'7", 340 plus pounds. He anchored very well, and he held his own. The question mark that I have for Lampkin is where does he fit in an NFL roster? Because obviously at 5'10", that's a lot of height that you're giving up. Your standard guards, you'd like them to be at 6'3" is kind of the benchmark. Maybe you can get by on 6'2", but 6'3" is kind of the benchmark. I wonder if a team doesn't draft him as a H-back, fullback type of guy, drop down 20 pounds, and use him in a lot of heavy set packages. The problem with that is I haven't seen him catch very much. But, with as much as they've moved these guys around, hey, Willie, go take some snaps with the tight end group tomorrow.
Yeah.
Because here's the thing. What do you have to lose? Because you've already shown really good tape. And coming in from a PFF perspective, he was very good. The analytics showed that he was very good. But Ryan just said in the comments, his tape's very fun to watch. And when you watch him at UNC, he played a lot bigger than 5'10". So I, for one, was shocked when I heard 5'10". Sub 6 foot. I was shocked. But this is a guy, we talk about him all the time, just dogs. They are the Jimmies and Joes that beat the X's and O's, right? This is a Jimmy and Joe. You find a way to get him on your roster on Sundays, whether that's as a fullback, a blocking tight end in a heavy set scheme, even if you want to use him as a swing guard, I love the Pat Ricard call out with the Ravens. It's that same style of guy that's going to work. And Jacob, I know you and I are in full agreement on using him as an H-back, but what do you think about Willie Lampkin and where he's gone so far?
I love the temperament. Like, I love the attitude. Like, you talk about a guy that's incredibly undersized, just for all intents and purposes. It's like, you're going up against guys that are, that who you're lining up against is going to have size on you. Like, that just by your build and the position you play and what you're going into it, he doesn't give a crap. Like, he has, I don't care that I'm 5'9", or not 5'9". I don't care that I'm 5'10". I made him even smaller. You see what I did there? I'm 5'9". I don't know why I said like, that's my height.
The David of Goliath, if you will.
But like, I'm a guy that has the confidence and the swagger to be like, I understand that, like, you don't think this is going to work. You think I'm outclassed in the situation, but he just isn't. He just goes out there, gives you absolutely everything. He's the king of the leverage game. Like, when you are going to be that size, you have got to play leverage, because there's a lot of guys in this class. Some of the bigger guys, like Holland Pierce, for one, is a guy that a lot of guys that play with a high pad level, because they're those guys that are 6'6", 6'7", things like that. And it's like, you've got to find your wherever you can win. You got to find what is going to work for you. And I think he just plays the leverage game. He plays with that attitude. But I would love to see him come running downhill with a running start, like as an H-back, as a Pat Ricard, and put him there and let him go just get under someone's chin strap and just put him on their butt. Like, I would love to see that.
I will say, having a rep against Deion Walker, which he's 6'7.5", huge guy, and sometimes Deion can give up on some plays or not show that athleticism. So having Lampkin be 9 inches smaller and a smaller guy to size up and be able to leverage Deion, that was pretty easy because he plays on a high pad level, and he leveraged him. It was a good rep to have for Willie Lampkin, because it definitely showed his capability against a bigger guy, but also a guy that didn't show that aggressiveness on that rep.
Yep, absolutely. And with Lampkin, it's a get in where you fit in type of guy. When you have that leverage, low man on the totem pole wins, right? We hear it all the time in football. Low man wins, and Lampkin is showing that. And the other thing that was surprising to me about this offensive line class a little bit is a lot of these smaller school guys like Gray Zabel and North Dakota State, and another guy that we're going to talk about, Carson Vinson from Alabama A&M. They are some really good talents in these lower level schools. And a part of that stems from NIL pushing the talent down. The playing field's a little bit leveled. Not everybody's going to Alabama, but when you have a guy, like Vinson, who's very well built, can play physical and aggressive and hold his own at left tackle, he's done a lot of really good work in Mobile. He's going to find himself drafted. But the other thing that isn't talked about enough, and I've been on this bandwagon for some time, and people called me a madman. They called me crazy. Kelvin Banks is sliding down boards. And I don't know if it's some people may think it's prospect fatigue. Some people may think it's just other people rising above him. There's been some issues on his tape that I've noted very heavily, especially with his ability to move side to side. His feet are a little heavy at times. He seems like he almost gets lost out there on the interior. He would do with a better fit to guard. As you can see on my big board, I have his teammate Cam Williams ahead of him. But we have to have a serious conversation. Kelvin Banks was the guy that was talked about as a top 5, top 10 pick in this draft. And there's rumors that he's sliding, and I've seen mocks that don't have him in the first round. Jacob, what do you think about that, about Kelvin Banks potentially sliding out of the top 32?
I still find that a little much to me, just because of the way I think he finished the year. I thought I don't know. It's one of those things too, where I think for me, it's more other people get rising up than him because I know there are issues in his tape, but I didn't really see anything towards the end of the year that I hated about him. Like I there was that no point where I was like, man, I just don't know. And if you want to say, oh, he's going to kick in and play guard, and that kind of maybe has him slide down or something like that. Yeah, that's fine with me. He was OT1 for me for a long time. I have no idea. Like I said, I am reorganizing the crap out of that in a couple of days. But I get it. I get it in a class where, as you got deeper into it, even before the Shrine, even before the Senior Bowl, you got deeper into this class and realized, hey, this class, they may not be those household names. You know, you're talking about guys from Rutgers and Missouri and Minnesota and WVU and just not non-powerhouses. You didn't necessarily see them or really like, you know what I mean? Like that, they weren't the forefront of the attention. And now that you're really diving into their tape, they're just better than him. And I think that's the biggest thing for me is just like, I don't think he's really hurt himself that much. I think his game is what his game is. It's just we're all of a sudden realizing, man, Mbou's a pretty good player. You know, Ozzie Trapillo from Boston College. Like, I didn't know who he was till like a month and a half ago. And then I was like, why didn't I know who this guy was? Like, wait, what are we, you know? That's where I kind of am. I am surprised he's still slid that far because, like, I think he's a first-round talent in my board, even if you think he's a guard. But we'll see where I ultimately land on that in the coming weeks.
Yeah.
Sorry, guard could help.
Go ahead, Randall.
Protection, and then his run game, I think, increases as a guard to go up on that second level and then run duos with him, and zone running will help him in the guard position. So I think that is a better idea for him. But then I would think as a guard, he goes more into the second round.
Yeah. So I know Jim's in the chat, and Jim's down in Mobile. Normally you would see his pretty face with us tonight, but he's out in Mobile. He's got boots on the ground. To answer his question, Mbou, it's not that he's that low on the list. It's just other players are that high. You know, you look at guys like Josh Simmons, who I've been steadfast. If he was healthy, he is offensive tackle #1 and is a top 5 selection. Ursery's done really good things. Mbou from Purdue's very flexible and can play both positions. Mbou from Missouri, and I hate that he ended up getting sick and had to pull out of the Senior Bowl for stomach flu virus. I hate it because I really wanted to see him, but he was a guy that I really wanted to solidify his position because he's one of these guys that we talk about, the Sabaneas, the Donovan Jacksons, the guys that played tackle. Is their future potentially at guard? In Mbou's case, he's got the length to stick outside at tackle. Does he have the ability to do so? Does he have the skill set to do so? And I think he's still one of these quote unquote question marks of this class in terms of where you're going to put him. I don't think there's necessarily a wrong answer, just like with Donovan Jackson, just like with Jonas Sabanea. There's not a wrong answer on where you put him, but at the same time, you have to understand that guys like, Tyler Booker, he's a solid guard, but he's not going to be a tackle for you. Ozzie Trapillo, again, solid right tackle, probably too tall to stand inside at guard. But Jacob, what do you think about Mbou from Missouri? Mbou, multiple same name, different games. What do you think about Armand from Missouri and kind of where you would have him on your board?
I think he might be 2 or 3. I think he plays left tackle at the next level. I think you let him go to left tackle. I think he's got that athletic ability to at least try it over there. I know Cleveland Browns fans won't want to hear stuff like that because we've already seen that. And now seeing your comp from Kelvin Banks, and I feel like that's just mean. But I don't know why we needed to take that shot at him tonight.
Yeah. I mean, hey, if the shoe fits, we got to wear it, right? But
I'm trying to
no,
pull up. Go ahead.
yeah, I was gonna say no, and I think when you look at my big board, right? So just to kind of break it down, guys in green are going to be first round grade, guys in yellow are going to be round 2 and 3. So everybody that's on this list, in my opinion, is worthy, not necessarily going to be, but is worthy of going in the top 100. So where does the line draw? Where is there a tier drop off? I really don't think there is a tier drop off in these 19 guys. I think that they're very interchangeable. I think these would be your top guys. Now, some of these folks people might disagree with me on, and that's okay. That's part of the draft cycle. Emory Jones, there's some people that aren't as high on Javonte Spraggins as I am, which is perfectly fine. There's other people like Ryan talked about, Chase Lunt. He's on my big board, but he's further down. But I think when we talk about tackles in years past, right, you would have the tier breaks. You'd have your 3 or 4 guys that are top 10 picks, and then another 2 guys that are first rounders and then second rounders. This class has probably maybe 2 guys, maybe 3 that would be in the entire first round. And then from rounds 2 through 5, it is a flavor of the month depending on who's picking on the clock. If you run a zone raid scheme offense, if you run a zone offense, you might be looking at an Armand from Missouri. If you want a more power style right tackle, you might be looking at Ozzie Trapillo from Boston College. If you want a finesse guy, Connerly may be your man. It's going to be a matter of who's picking and what are they wanting from their offensive line.
What kind of ice cream do you like? Like, it's that, right? It was like, what was it? Was it the Garrett Wilson, Chris Olave class at wide receiver, where it was like, just pick which type you like. Like, just be like, oh, I like the fast, shifty guy. But like Mimbu, I think he can do a little bit of everything for me. And I think that's why he ends up kind of getting a little bit higher. Like, I think he's really, really twitched up. I think he's explosive, but I think he's thick and powerful. And I think he needs some refinement. I think he turns 21 in March. I think it is, which is just absurd. But yeah, like I like him. It's definitely, what do you want? Like, do you want are you going to run a zone heavy offense? Are you going to run a gap heavy offense? Like, you want a power guy? You want a finesse guy? Maybe you want a guy that does a little bit of everything. Maybe you want a guy that can play 6 positions. There's a lot of variety in this class, and I think it is not being talked about enough.
Hey, Bill. So on this list here that we have, is Gray Zabel your last rated player on this list? Is this in order?
Yes. So this would be in order. If I had to go 1 through 19, this is where I would go.
So give me maybe a 10 number range where you feel Gray Zabel may fall to. So we're looking at first round Will Campbell on top. Where do you think that last one ends? Are we talking at 100? Are we talking at 75, 80?
So if we're talking where I think Zabel would go, I think that you're probably looking somewhere between 75 and 85. Okay. I think you're probably looking the midway of the third round, because here's the thing, and this is the 2 things about this offensive line class. Number one, the nickname that I gave this offensive line class is Baskin Robbins. There's 32 flavors. Everybody's got one. The second part of that is, once 1 or 2 teams start to take an offensive lineman, they're going to fly. That all it takes is that one team that, for example, Cincinnati takes a guard in the middle part of round 1. Then teams are going to start to say, okay, well, if they took this guy, now we can go with our guy. Or the Rams taking a left tackle at 26. Once that guy goes, there's going to be a linchpin, and we're going to see a run, and it's going to push talent down the board that probably should go higher. But again, like we talked about at the start of the episode, there's a supply and demand conversation that we have to have, the supply in this class is going to refill the demand because the demand is so heavy. You look at all 32 teams across the league. I don't think there's a single team that doesn't have a need on the offensive line for any reason. Now, some of them may not need starters. Some of them probably need depth. Some of them probably need swing tackles. Some of them probably need a starter. Some probably need multiple starters. But every single team outside of maybe Philadelphia, I could say, you could convince me of it, would have a need.
Buffalo.
But I mean, maybe Buffalo as well. But you're at least talking 28 to 30 of the NFL teams having some form of a need on the offensive line somewhere.
Look at the final four teams before we were getting into the Super Bowl. Commanders need offensive line.
Everywhere.
Chiefs need offensive line almost everywhere as well. Almost like 3 or 4 out of the 5 sort of thing. And that was final four. They made it to the final four with those kind of offensive line. That's showing even what the back teams that didn't even make it, what they're dealing with. It's a very top-heavy offensive line league right now, where the good ones have a good full roster. The rest need more than one position available.
Absolutely. And that's what you have to think about is when you look also at the state of this first round group, right? In most years, you have between probably 15 and 17 first round grades on average. Sometimes it's a little more, sometimes it's a little less. I have 18 first round grades across all positions right now. But, Jim Nagy said it this week. He was talking with teams that only have 8 or 9 first round grades. So at that point now, you're talking about second round graded guys that are going to go in the first round. What's that position that you're going to be inclined to, quote unquote, reach for? Is it going to be a wide receiver that you're not confident is going to be an alpha dog for you? Or is it going to be an offensive lineman that you can say, hey, even if he doesn't develop into an all-star, an all-pro, he could develop into a starter, which should be the definition of a first-round grade. But at the same time, there's no guarantee he's going to be that immediate starter like Jim talked about. So I think that's the conversation that has to be had is at what point in what linchpin, what pick in that first round do we say, okay, this is the spot where we're now out of first round grades. So now we need to look at what's the best spend of our first round draft capital. And Jacob, you might have a different spin on it.
Not really. if we're like, I would have to go back and count it up, but that number sounds right. Like I don't think I have over 20. I don't think I make it to 20 if I'm looking at it, being honest. And it's like, yeah, Jim Nagy, that's interesting. I didn't hear him. I didn't hear the 8. That is an insanely low number, but everybody. Yeah. I've seen a lot of people talk about like picks 20 through 60 though being just like that number range right there is like who I can't remember who it was. Maybe it was Field Yates or somebody of that nature who had said something like they don't see much difference but in the talent of picks 20 to 60. Like they're all just kind of right there, really good players in that 40 player run or whatever. You're going to get like a player that's comparable to the top 20 almost, just because that's kind of where that number is. And of course, a lot of it has to do with the quarterback position because what's really interesting is we saw last year a lot of really good talent get pushed down because 6 quarterbacks go in the top 12. Well, that's not happening this year. So it's really going to be interesting to see who does get pushed down and who gets elevated when there's that quarterback aspect is taken out of it. And the fact that it's like, I don't really know, like how many of these guys are blue chip. I think I have 5 or 6
4
blue chip grades.
Yeah.
I think 5 is my number. It might be 6. I can't, but like, I know I don't have more than 6. Like, and I feel like every year I have at least like 10. Like in a normal year, I feel like the top 10, even well, minus the overdrafting of quarterbacks, but like the top 10 is usually, oh, don't worry, if you're in the top 10, you're going to get a blue chipper. I don't necessarily think that's the case this year.
Yeah, no, I think you're right because I have 4 blue chip grades. So, after pick 4, and even then, there's no guarantee it's after pick 4 because if you say quarterbacks go 1 and 2, or quarterbacks go 1 and 3, or 2 quarterbacks and 4 blue chip prospects, that's 6 players that are top level guys. And then after that, you have probably another 12 or 13 that are first round grades that would be immediate starters for you. You're now into the playoff positioning teams. You're in the playoff portions of the draft where those teams, hey, they already made the playoffs. They know what they can do. They now have to figure out how to build on that. The Kansas City Chiefs of the world that have to figure out their offensive line woes, the Washington Commanders and their offensive line woes, and the Buffalo Bills and their offensive line depth. And so this offensive line class is getting a bad rap because it doesn't have a guy at the top to define it, right? It doesn't have a Joe Alt.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't have a Rashawn Slater. It doesn't have a even some top guys that went before, like an Andrew Thomas. It doesn't have that guy. What it does have is it has depth. It has guys that are going to be what I like to call lunch pail guys that are going to start in the league. They may not start immediately, but they're going to start in the league at a high level for multiple years. And Jacob, you hit the nail on the head. Picks 20 through 60. I would say probably 20 through about 75, which takes you all the way into the early to mid parts of round 3. There is going to be talent there that in any other year probably would go late first, early second.
Mm-hmm.
But because there's so much of it, like, to give you guys additional context, right? So I grind tape like nobody's business. Everybody at the Draft Professor here will tell you that. I have over 440 players watched, scouted, graded, and on my big board of that 440, about a quarter of them, little under a quarter, so about 100 of them are round 2 to 3 grades. Well, there's only 60 picks in rounds 2 and 3.
Mm-hmm.
So, but there's 100 guys that are worthy of that in any class you drop them into would be a round 2-3 grade. So we're going to see guys, we're going to see the Luke Kandras, the Gray Zables, the Clay Webbs on day, potentially even into day 3 if they fall far enough. And then we're going to look at this class and be like, how did they get there? Well,
how did I get him in round 5? Like what? Yeah.
Right. How did I get him in round 5? What happened? But it's because of the depth of this class. This class is deeper than the Pacific Ocean. And it's not talked about enough because all you talk about is, oh, well, there's not that top flight talent. There's not a lot of first round grades.
There's not,
which is fine. Yeah. There's no good quarterbacks. But we all know NFL GMs don't make their money on Thursday night. They make their money on Saturday afternoon, rounds 4, 5, 6, and 7, day 3, when everyone's already gone home, all the announcers are at round 6 and they're just tired. That's when GMs make their money.
Mm-hmm.
Look at San Francisco, right? San Francisco gets Brock Purdy as Mr. Irrelevant. Could you imagine if they didn't hit on that? Tom Brady in round 6. And I get it's quarterback, so it's a little easier for them to succeed. But if you can hit on or day 3 guys, you're going to have long-term job security in the NFL, because the average NFL GM, you're expected to hit probably a third of your picks. If you hit 30 to 35% of your picks as players on your roster, you're Hall of Fame caliber.
Yeah.
So if I were an NFL GM in this offensive line group, I would be doing everything physically possible. If I'm sitting there, pick 22 to 32 in round 1, I'm doing everything possible to trade back and get more bites at this apple. Because would I rather have an Ursary from Minnesota at 22, or would I rather trade back and be able to take an Ozzie Trapillo and a Donovan Jackson at 34 and 50?
Mm-hmm. No, absolutely. I mean, the goal. Yeah, absolutely. The goal of GM is to, in free agency, find people that will outplay their contract. And then in the draft, find people who will outplay their draft pick. And that's day 3. And that's what you do. And then when you do that, that's how you get a Super Bowl caliber team. And that's exactly nail on the head, Bill. I love that. All right. Well, we will take a quick intermission. We'll talk about where you can find each other. I appreciate everybody watching. We have 70 folks watching live right now, so we appreciate we will do right after this little break. We'll talk about some measurements and some specific offensive linemen. But my name's Randall Slifer. You can find me on Twitter and Blue Sky if you'd like to find me there. While you're watching this, please hit the like and subscribe button to see us. We do content every single day throughout the week, Monday through Sunday. We talk about every single position. We do mock drafts on Fridays. We pretty much cover it all, and we'll be covering it up until the draft and beyond. Bill, tell us about yourself and where we can find you.
Yes, you can find most of my content over on X at Spark Scouting. I am also a writer and analyst for the Right Way Sports Network. That's TWSN.net. You can take a look at some of my content. Just posted an article before we went live about 30 minutes ago about 3 underrated quarterbacks in this draft class. So feel free to go check that out as well over on X at Spark Scouting. Jacob, where can the people find your lovely mustached face?
Everywhere. You can find me over on X at Rochism13. The written work's over at theobr.com. It's Browns focused, but there's a lot of general draft content there as well. And on YouTube, it's the Orange and Brown Report, where I'm on there a couple days a week with some draft content over there as well.
Absolutely. Right. And for everybody that's also watching, like Randall said, we appreciate you, but make sure that you watch this on YouTube, you like the video, you share it with all your friends. Make sure you subscribe to the NFL Draft Fanatic Draft Professor YouTube channel, like Randall said. Make sure you turn on that notification bell as well, just so that way you get notified when we go live with all of our draft content. But Randall, I think the next goal we were going to kind of talk about some prospects at the Senior Bowl that, some measurements that are going to be key, because not all offensive linemen are created equal. And I know that one that we were going to talk about first is Jonah Sabanea, which is a guy that I am high as a kite on, folks. You saw it on my big board. He's offensive lineman number 2. He's a first-round grade. The big question for Sabanea coming into Mobile was he going to be a tackle or a guard? And the big number on the screen there, obviously 6'3", 339 pounds, 10-inch hands. The big one is arm length, 34 and a half, a little over 34 and a half, 34 and 5/8. But the average, the standard for me, when I look at offensive linemen and playing tackle or guard, the standard for me is around 33 inches. If it's 32 and 7/8, but they're really athletic, I can live with 1/8 of an inch, but I like to be at the 33 mark. Any more than that, I feel pretty good about it, just because longer arms means less leverage that you have to give up to your defensive lineman. And the big thing too, also, that we don't talk about wingspan, right? I want a wide wingspan because obviously you're going to have to ask him to move laterally, and that wingspan helps him cover side to side. So a larger wingspan is definitely necessary. But Randall, when you're looking at offensive linemen, whether they're tackles or guards, what are some of the things that you're looking for that you might, look at like a Jonah Sabanea type of guy?
Yeah, I mean, you're right. There's a minimum at the arm length and wingspan for sure. So you kind of have to have a cutoff point at there. But then when it comes to tackles, I'm looking at your kickback and your lateral movement first, and then go into measurement second to make sure. Because you're right, athleticism does overpower. Just talked about Willie Lampkin being 5'10" and things along those lines. Your athleticism and your ability to just maintain your moves and technique is what's the most important, and then we'll look at arm length. I do agree 33 is probably where we're looking at. But Jonah, I mean, you've been talking about Jonah for a long time. Me and you have been podcasting since about October about it, and I'm on that train as well. I don't think I have him at 2, but I have him in the top 5, and I enjoy him. And Jacob, what did you see out of him?
Yeah, it feels like another really polarizing prospect to me, because like everybody seems so like entrenched. He's inside, he's outside. I thought some of his stuff here at the Senior Bowl, I think I've liked a little bit of his inside stuff a little bit more than I've liked the outside stuff, but the athletic ability, the measurables, the power, he's got enough there. For me, I think you said it really nicely when talking about the lateral movement and getting into getting into his drops, getting into his sets, being able to do those things. I think he can do it all. I think he can be a tackle. But if you are a guy, if you're a team that needs him to be a guard, I think he's a perfectly fine guard as well. I just think he can deal with power. He can deal with athleticism and speed rushers. He could be on that island if you wanted to play him on the outside. But if you feel like you just think he would just be better on the inside, I think that's absolutely fine. But I think one thing with him that I really have enjoyed is that when he gets beat, he doesn't give up. And I think that's one thing that really sticks out about his game. Josh Connerly is a lot like that too, where it's like you may push Josh Connerly or Savanea back, and they're going to be like, let me just reset here and just bring the fight back to you. So I've really liked what I've seen from him. And I do have him as a tackle, but I do see the appeal at guard because I think he's had some really good guard snaps the last couple of days.
Yeah.
Bill, did you
Jacob, I know you
have that tackle or guard? I apologize.
So I have him at tackle, and that's just because he's played left tackle, right guard, and right tackle this season for Arizona. So he's played all three. So this is a guy that can do multiple. One of the things that I also do here at the Draft Professor and on my big board, everybody calls me the comp king because I have a comparison for every single player that I scout. But my comp for Sabanea is like Elijah Vera Tucker. When he was at USC, this was a guy that could play guard or tackle, eventually kicked inside to guard for the Jets. But I think if he's one of these guys, if your team just needs to put the 5 best offensive linemen on the field, regardless of position, this is a guy you take, and he's one of those 5. It doesn't matter where you need him to be. You just put him there and just let it go.
I love it. All right, we're going to talk about Armand Membaugh, Missouri. They'll go.
Yeah, so Armand Membaugh, this is a guy I was really looking forward to seeing at the Senior Bowl. Obviously had to withdraw due to some illness concerns, but the same thing, same size, 6'3", 332, 34-inch arms, 81-inch wingspan. Randall, you talked about his kick. You talked about kick slides with Savanea, and Membaugh has that same, easy redirect with kick slide ability and can move things around. And this is a guy, again, another one that, he has the size to stay outside at tackle. If you want to put him inside at guard, there is not a single NFL talent evaluator that will tell you you're wrong for doing that. He's a guy that if I have an offensive line concern, if I'm the Chicago Bears, if I'm the Miami Dolphins, and I need to just put the 5 best guys in front of my quarterback, Armand's the guy. Jonas Savanea is the guy. So, again, this is a guy, kind of similar to an Eric Flowers type of guy. I've heard Zach Tom thrown around with Membaugh as well. That same style. The one thing, he plays with such an edge and a violence and a hatred in his heart that I would want him on my NFL roster if I'm a talent evaluator. But Jacob, how do you feel about the Missouri offensive line product?
Yeah, he's one of those guys, you just draft him and you figure out where he plays later. I think that's kind of what you were pointing out there, just because it's like, yeah, he's got that mean streak. I think he's got the power. I think he's got the athleticism. He's got the length. I think there's some twitch there. Like I think he can deal with whatever is thrown at him. He's like that guy. Like I said this about Will Campbell. Like I've said this about Will Campbell, and even Wyatt Milam, where I'm like, I draft the guy, and if it's like, hey, he needs to play inside. Okay, fine. That's fine. I don't care. I know he's going to work out somewhere. Like that's where I'm kind of bullish on Membaugh, is like, I think he's going to work out because he's got the athleticism. He's got the power. Just figure it out later, man. Like, I don't care where he's going to play. He can play both sides. And I think he can play left tackle. I think he could be a franchise left tackle with that blend of size, speed, athleticism, and you just let him just some little bit of technical refinements here and there. Let him figure those things out, hash that stuff out. And maybe by the time he's like 24, I'm just kidding. You can't even play right now. I was like, you gotta wait 3 years because he's sitting it. Yeah. But no, I like him a ton.
Yeah, I was just saying he's barely 21 right now. Like he's depending on I think he's just under 21 or he'll turn 21. So this is a guy that's got a sky high ceiling in Armand Membao, and we've said it before, we'll say it again. You draft him, figure it out later. That's the type of guy you're going to get. The next one on the docket, though, is a guy that I have been high on for quite some time, and folks called me crazy for it because, Boston College offensive lineman. Are you kidding me? You watched Boston College's offense, period? Yes, yeah, I put myself through that ringer. But Ozzy Trapilo, just talk about the numbers: 6'7.5", 321 pounds, 10-inch hands, almost 33.5-inch arms, 81-inch wingspan. That is a mountain of a man that you are putting at the tackle position. I don't care, yes, obviously being larger and being taller, there's issues with his pad level playing too high and giving up unnecessary leverage. But at a certain point, when I have a guy that large on the outside, that is a lot of mountain of man to move. That is a lot of mountain of man to get around. And he's got the frame, he's got the length, the two big things. Number one, he also has a work ethic that's unbelievable. Dom, one of our draft professors, he interviewed him today. If you haven't seen that, go make sure you check out Dom's interview over on X as well. But he's been working with, I believe it's Scarnecchia, the Patriots offensive line coach, this entire offseason leading up. So obviously, if you're working with a legendary coach like Scarnecchia, who's had some really good offensive linemen, as much as we don't like to talk about the Patriots, but he's had some really good offensive linemen. This is a guy I've been very high on, just because even though he's large, he's got some of the most active hands in this class. They keep moving, they keep edge rushers at bay. I compare him to like Mike McGlinchey. And yes, that's probably high because that's a top 10 guy, when you're talking McGlinchey, but stylistically, it's the same style of guy, really good pass protector, really big. You got to have him figure out how to play with a little bit lower pad level. But I think Ozzy, he's a guy, again, the top of the second round. If you're picking 35 to 45, you take him, and now you've got your right tackle of the future, and he could play left tackle for you. Not saying that would be his best position. He's better served on the right side as a mauler, but he could play left tackle for you. But Jacob, what do you think about the Boston College product?
He's mean. That's a mean dude right there. Like, I love that, man. Like, I'm kind of old school in that sense, where I just really enjoy seeing like these road graders who just want to put you in the dirt. And I think that's his. And it's not like he can't pass protect or anything like that. It's not like he's just a one-dimensional kind of guy. Like you said, I think he moves really well. Like, you don't expect it, like in terms of the athletic ability. You don't necessarily expect it when you see him as kind of juiced up and powerful. But like, if you're looking for that road grader, that mauler type, man, I'm on board there.
Yep, absolutely. So the next one is another guy that I've thoroughly enjoyed, and we talked about him a little bit earlier. Gray Zabel. Again, he checks all the boxes when you're talking about a tackle. 6'5", 316. 9-inch hands. 33-inch arm length. 77 5/8 wingspan, so a little bit smaller than some of the guys we just talked about. So you have that question mark, but this is a guy I've watched take snaps at guard. I'm pretty sure he took snaps at center today. I've seen him take snaps at right tackle. I think the only thing I haven't seen him take a snap at is left tackle. And this is a guy you could draft. Again, another one of those, you draft him and you figure it out.
Yeah.
You go to your offensive line coach and say, hey, here's Gray Zabel. Here's his size. Here's his measurements. Here's what he's played. I'm paying you to figure it out. Go figure it out. And that's what you're going to get from the North Dakota State prospect. Jacob, what are you thinking about Gray Zabel, and where do you think he probably fits best at the next level?
You just saw this guy go out there and try to get as many reps as he humanly possibly has been able to get. And that's like, okay, so you're going to do whatever it takes. Like he seems like that dude that you were like, if you were sitting there and your team's been ravaged by the flu, they got food poisoning, so you're missing a bunch of players, and they're like, man, we don't got anybody to play tight end. I think Gray Zabel would be like, F it, put me out there and see what happens.
Put me in the slot.
Yeah, he would Josh McCown it. You remember that time Josh McCown played wide receiver? Yeah, I think Gray Zabel could do that. Like, I could just go out and see this dude. Like, he's just – it seems like every year there's a North Dakota State offensive lineman, like just every year. And it's Zabel, and it's like Zabel was pretty much on the right side for and then this year they were like, we don't have a left tackle. Like, we don't know who's going to play left tackle. And he's like, all right.
Yeah. I'll figure it out.
He played over 900 snaps at left tackle this year. And he was just like, yeah, no, I was like, I'll figure it out. He's just like, good athlete, technically sound, love what he does with his hands. They're very active, always looking for work, and just overall looking for work. A little bit leaner, 6'5", 316. You can see it. The profile, he's a little bit leaner. Don't think he can't hit you, because he will. But whenever I see a guy that will, you always talk. Like Little League, you remember being coached up in Little League, or if you've been around Little League football, it's just like the coaches always do whatever it takes to win. Do whatever it takes to win. We got to do whatever it takes to win. Gray Zabel's going to do whatever it takes to win, and those are the guys I want on my team.
There you go. Is Gray Zabel the Jade Barrion of the offensive line this class on versatility?
Yes.
I'd say 100%. Unequivocally. I think there's one guy that I would probably put up there with Zabel, and I think it's the guy we're going to talk about next, the Purdue talent, Marcus Mbow. 6'4", 309. Again, the same 33-inch arms. He's got that tackle threshold, but this is a guy that, before the show kicked off, I talked about him. He played tackle at Purdue, but he can slide inside the guard. And I'll say it here for all the folks, because I said it in the pre-show. If there's a ray gun pointed at the earth and I've got one choice for my center on my roster, aliens said, hey, take your center or we blow up the planet. Give me Marcus Mbow from Purdue.
They're going
to blow up planet. And I think Marcus Mbow is a guy that, he has the athletic ability to play tackle, to play guard, to play center. You watch him when he pulls on certain run schemes and he gets into that second level, you might as well just hand him the ball and let him run it, because even though he's 309, he is light on his feet. And I think he and Zabel are probably two of the guys so far in Mobile this week that have skyrocketed their stock. I'm crazy in saying this right now, but I'm going to say it here. I think there is a high probability that Marcus Mbow ends up in round 1 going to Detroit for Dan Campbell. And playing guard or center for Dan Campbell. Is it crazy? A couple weeks ago, probably would have said, yeah, after the way he's played in Mobile. I don't think it's that crazy anymore. But Jacob, I'll turn it over to you to try to follow up me, gushing over Mbow. What do you think of him?
I play around. I probably do like 12 mock drafts on my phone a day, like at least by lunchtime. And who knows what the final number is. You'd be like trying to kill some time real quick. You're like, oh man, I'm really tired. I'm going to take a break. You sit down at work and it's like, did you just do 4 mock drafts? Yeah, I did. And I've started putting him in the second round. Like I've done it multiple times to the Browns and putting him on the interior offensive line because I think he could really excel in that kind of like wide zone system. And I like him on the interior quite a bit. And it comes back to this like, hey, let's play him on the interior. But if a situation happens like at Ohio State this year where you had to kick Donovan Jackson, you're all American guard out to tackle, like, and you just got to see if he can do it. Like, I think Mbow can do those sorts of things, moves really well. I love what he does with his feet, his footwork overall, just kind of like, I don't think he lunges like you see some of those 6'4", 6'5" guys that can lunge and overextend and just kind of whiff on those things. I don't think you really see that with him. I like him better on the interior. If you did put him at center, I think he'd have a really good career there. And he's another one of those guys where it's like, is he a superstar, surefire, like blue chipper? No, but I feel good that he has at least a solid NFL career.
That's great. Yeah. All right, answer this question for Brandon for us. Is Gray Zabel the versatile guy everyone was expecting Milam to be?
So I think he's more versatile than people expected Milam to be. There was a lot of questions about Milam. Some folks had him as a tackle, some folks had him as a guard, but didn't really say that he could play both, right? They said he was a guy that's going to stick at one spot or the other. I think Zabel has completely changed the game when we talk versatility, because this is a guy that you can say, he's an offensive lineman. He's not an offensive tackle. He's not an offensive guard. He's not a center. He is an offensive lineman.
He's truly an OL. Yeah.
He's truly an OL, where Milam, if you had him at tackle, you weren't necessarily wrong. If you had him at guard, you weren't necessarily wrong. If you asked him to bounce back and forth between the two, it might be a little issue, but I think Zabel and Mbow are probably the two most versatile guys that are going to find themselves rising up boards, because NFL GMs are going to say, again, I want to put the best 5 guys in front of my quarterback. Give me a guy like Zabel or Mbow, give me both of them, and that's 2 spots filled and done.
Yeah,
absolutely.
So,
love it. Yeah. All right. I think we got one more guy that we're going to go for measurable sakes and give shout outs to our HBCU. We're going to go with Carson Vinson. Bill, you hit it off.
Yeah. So Carson Vinson, Alabama A&M. This is an HBCU guy. And I gotta give a shout out to Bill Carroll, one of the guys that I know who deals heavily with HBCU guys. 6'7", 314, 35-inch arms, 83-inch wingspan. This guy is big. And again, we talk about it, do larger guys have the ability to slide inside at guard? Vinson's another one of these guys that you take him and you can play him at tackle. You could play him at guard. You could play him anywhere along the line. He's one of the, take the best 5 and figure it out later, because, he plays with a vicious mean streak and he plays very heavy-handed. I'm very shocked that there hasn't been more broken ribs reported when players are going up against Vinson, because the way he punches into some folks' chests, you would think that they break a rib or 5. And it's crazy to think about, yes, his upright playing style, obviously when you're in an HBCU, you have a little bit wider margin for error because the level of competition is not as high. But I still think that if he were to play at a Division II school, even some Division I schools, he would have fit right in and not had a single issue, because he's that well refined. And this is a guy that, he's a little bit lower on my board right now, just because the initial evaluation put him as day 3, but it was a day 3 guy that you could take and develop. Now, I'm not confident that he makes it out of round 4. Just because of how well he's raised his stock at the Senior Bowl. Mm-hmm. But Jacob, how do you feel about the HBCU prospect?
It's one of those things where I didn't have any clue who this dude was 3 days ago. But like I started seeing these names, and I follow a lot of draft people, and it wasn't just like one random draft guy that was like, hey, this guy's kind of, it was like yesterday and even some more today where I would open up my Twitter feed and it would be like, well, there's that guy's name again. There's that guy's name again. And I haven't been able to dive into the film for him yet, but oh my goodness, those hands are violent. Like that is like, did you know that he legally, I just looked this up. He's legally not allowed to put his hands in his pockets. Yeah, that's concealing a deadly weapon.
Wow. Nice. There you go. Yeah, you got me on that one. You got me. I was
fully expecting some kind of report from Tom Pelissero about how he couldn't put his hands in his pockets. I was like, this is going to be good. This is the kind of entertainment you get on Wednesday nights with me and Jacob, folks.
But dude, I just like, this is one of these things where we always say about the Senior Bowl and especially about the NFL Combine that like you shouldn't completely change a scouting profile on a player, but these things can make you reevaluate and tell you need to go dive into the film. Like this guy is at the top of I haven't watched, but I absolutely have got to get into this quickly because watching his Senior Bowl stuff that I've seen, it's very obvious that like this is a draftable prospect. Like he is, and he's gone and remember the level of defensive line talent at the Senior Bowl. Like he's not going against Joe Schmoes. He's going against dudes that are dominating, and he's holding his own. So I'm very excited to dive into this tape.
Yeah, I mean, that's the most important thing for football players like Carson Vinson is that Senior Bowl, is being able to stack up his talent against the top talent that's going in the draft. So I love that. But yeah, looks like we're at a little bit over an hour. The algorithm loves it to be right around that hour. So I appreciate everybody coming and watching. A lot of live people. I appreciate that on a Wednesday. It's a great week. Senior Bowl week is the best. Again, I'm at Randall Slifer. You can find me on Twitter at Blue Sky. Bill, you hit yours, and Jacob, you hit yours. Go right ahead.
Absolutely. So you can find me on X at Sparks Scouting. I'm also a writer and analyst for the Right Way Sports Network. That's TWSN.net. After we're done here, folks, head over to TWSN.net and check out that 3 underrated quarterbacks list that I just dropped. Jacob, where can the people find that lovely mustache that you've got going on?
I'm over there at Roachism13 there on X, and you can find the written work at theobr.com.
All right. Again, we appreciate you folks and enjoy the rest of your night. Thanks so much.
See you, folks.
Thank you for watching this episode of Mrs. R Relevant, the Daily Draft Podcast, brought to you by the Draft Professor. Please follow the Draft Professor on X at NFL Draft Fanatic. No I in Fanatic. Please follow the Draft Professor channel on YouTube at NFL Draft Fanatic. No I in Fanatic. We look forward to seeing you on our podcast tomorrow.